Hey, you got to the 24th and you said you remembered being with Sketchley, and then the next one, where did you sleep that night? Like, what was the...
Well, there was a little barn there, and there's McNelly and I and another fellow sleeping up in the loft floor of the barn. And then shortly after that, they mixed us all up, Service Corps and Medical, and I went up to the Neeson huts where the medics was.
Were you the only Service Corps up there?
That's the only one I remember in that hut, and there was Cotola and Schneider and Berkey, I don't know, a whole bunch of the medical guys.
And you were in with them?
Yeah.
And how long did that stay?
That stayed till we moved out of there and went to Brighton.
So then, who did you drive with then?
Well, after about a week after I come, old Doc Mansley went on leave. Scheme come up, and I took over Doc's Austin ambulance. And before he got back, they got, I think, 4 new Ford ambulance, and they gave Doc one of the new ones, and I kept his old Austin.
And who was with you in the ambulance?
Oh, a lot of the times it was, I can't remember, well, I remember Butch Gillette one time on the scheme, he was orderly, and Stewie Lau, Butch McKinnon,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I forget now.
So then when you'd have your ambulance and they'd be your orderly, who else was driving that you'd be on scheme with that you got to know?
All the rest of the drivers are all out.
And did you know any of them before this?
Never knew anybody in the 24th.
Now, when do you remember, what's the thing you remember most about running into Red, the driver?
Yeah, running Red. I think the first morning I was there on parade, I got, just before I left the holding unit, parcel from Wardy and Muriel, I guess, and he sent over 2 cans of snuff. And I loaded up in snuff, and Red saw me.
Saw you loading up?
He come over after they broke us off. Where'd you get the stuff? Said, I always remembered him because he was a red-headed fellow.
Okay, so that's how you first met Red.
Yeah, and
over at Tenasnoose. Now then, the next driver that you probably met was, at that time, would be...
well, it was Speedy Harleton. He was looking after the oil and grease and stuff. And he had to put near, he wouldn't give me anything unless you signed for it because he owned it.
Mm-hmm. He and George.
Yeah. And
what other drivers now?
there was George Leal. He was driving the station wagon or staff car.
How do you remember what your first encounter with George?
No, not exactly. I remember first encounter with Wolfman. He wanted me to go take his shift of guard while he was getting ready to go on leave, and I told him, no, sir.
That was at that particular place?
Yeah.
Now, did you ever meet in the local pub when you were there at the farm?
Yeah, I went down to the pub a couple of 3 times.
Who?
The cricketers.
Who with?
Oh, I don't know now.
The Cricketers was owned by...
Yeah, the Slim Whitmer's
wife, yeah. But you don't remember who you went down with or how
No.
you met her?
There was a couple of Indian boys, Veracity and Upperville. I remember they being down there when I got in there. I might have went down with O'Dowd or Lane, or cause we had to walk down quite a way. I don't know how far. We had to go to. Then McNelly and I went on our first 7-day leave while we was at Cold Harbor. That was the name of the place. And then we moved out of there in August.
How did you lost track of McNelly?
He's up in BC.
Yeah, but I mean, how did that happen through the
Well,
years?
he left this outfit in Holland, him and Pinky went to another outfit as driver max or 3rd class mechanics or something, and never saw him.
But Pinky kind of looked him up.
Well, yeah, Pinky had some, and then I wrote him a letter and he answered it, and that was about all. Sketchley looked him up and said he didn't seem to be too interested. He was kind of a loner.
Okay, now then, you're...
I had the Austin ambulance.
and you're still at
Cold Harbor.
Cold Harbor, and then
In August, sometime in August, we moved down to Brighton and Hove. And about all we did down there was a week on guard and a week off guard on the coast, walking up and down the coast. Oh, we went on schemes up in the Downs. We're right the second row of houses on the coast. That's where the fighter planes used to come over and strafe the gasworks down at Hove. Try to knock it out all the time. And we were there when the upgrade was on. And they took all the ambulances out, drove them down to the seaport. I didn't go because I was on guard. I don't know who took my ambulance. I was still driving the Austin ambulance. I don't know who took it there. I remember RBL and Omerod went. All the ambulances went to get. There was hardly anybody left back.
so you still had the same medic with you
They
when you had the Austin ambulance, or did you have anybody?
They vary. Because I don't know how many orderlies they have. And sometimes you go somewhere, you'd have one orderly, the next day you'd have another one.
But yet, when you got into the lines down in Italy, you pretty well had the same one all the time, didn't you?
Yeah, because there was, in the section, there was only...
So you're still not in a section, you're not operating
No,
like
I was
any
in
kind of a...
headquarters then.
It's a sort of a... Oh, you were headquarters?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was driving headquarters ambulance. And you'd have certain... Every so often you'd be on duty ambulance for a week. You took all the sick parades and on scheme you'd be working out of headquarters from the sections back. And then when my ambulance played out, it was water going down into the oil and oil coming up in the water, and they'd take it back and put a new gasket on it. They still do, and I remember Nordstrom.
Yeah, you told that little story already.
All right, they got in some 1,500 weights, 4 I think, or 1 for each section. They weren't new trucks, but they'd come from, I think, the Perth Regiment. They'd changed something, I don't know. So they put me driving 1,500 weight.
Now you'd be picking up supplies. You wouldn't be
picking up supplies.
You wouldn't be actually doing any ambulance driving in that. That's just supply wagon.
Just
right?
carting guys around. And I stayed at.
And you were still headquarters.
No, I'll be in Monk section then.
Oh, okay.
That was in. That'd be after we left Brighton. Went up to Leyswood. I just don't know when we went to Leyswood. It was before Christmas anyway.
Well, was there sections before you left Brighton?
Oh yeah.
And there'd be sections when you were in at Cold Harbor.
Yeah.
But you were not in a section until you got to Leyswood. Now, did Monk always have a section?
As long as I was there, he did, because he was the sergeant.
But you never had any encounter with Monk or with Riley or with...
Oh, I knew them
all. You knew them, but you didn't have anything personal to do with them. Who would be your sergeant in headquarters?
I guess Riley would be in headquarters. That's how I got to know, Watchorn, Al Watchorn, Bucky's, and Butch Gillette, Hillary Carson.
Okay, so now we get to Leyswood, and you are no longer a headquarters driver. You're a section driver.
Section driver, yeah.
And you're not doing ambulance. No. You're supply wagon or whatever.
And then just before Christmas, or was it after Christmas at Leyswood, they come along. I just forget how that worked. They were picking out a section to go to the assault school. So I don't know who the other driver was with me. So they put us through 2 weeks of training in our headquarters, the assault school training, to get ready to go to the assault school. Get out there, and all we did was wait around to get somebody got hurt.
Where was the assault school?
was not too far from Lazewood. Airwood
those,
Station.
in those hills?
Yeah,
like
and
in
the trees and hills and stuff in there.
The rocks?
We was out there till one bunch went through the course. I think it was 10 days they went through, or 2 weeks.
Well, how long were you actually at Lazewood? Like, was it several months or a year or?
We went there in the fall of 42 after Brighton. That little diary I got, I think it might have been in October or November. And we were there till the following next spring when we went up to Norfolk County.
Because it seems to me that most of the closeness that the 24th, you fellas
Yeah, it originated at
came
Lazewood.
there at Lazewood, eh?
Yeah.
That's when all these funny little incidents
Yeah.
seem to happen, and
That's when Smithhurst come to the outfit. He came when I was out the South School.
okay. Who else came in? Smithers joined you there.
And Sandercock, I think.
Sandercock came, but he was headquarters.
Yeah, he drove. I think he always
Where was headquarters?
just headquarters.
Yeah, but I mean, were they right in the castle grounds? Headquarters was in the
Yeah,
castle
and
grounds, and you fellows as section men were also in the castle grounds?
we were all mixed up, built it all in the same building, but we all slept together. I think they went by a bunch. Oh, well, your name. Take off 20 names. You go to this room. 15 names. Go to this room.
So it wasn't like it was
No.
out in the field when
No,
you got
no,
into
we're all
Italy
mixed
or
up.
anything. You were all.
We had old number 9 room. It was Pat Lane, Vic English, Smokey Weber, Pinky, me. I think that's all I can remember now. I think there was 9 of us in there, so we called it number 9 room.
So then, when it came time for breakfast, you all went to the main
the same
building
mess hall,
and
yeah.
all ate
Yeah.
together. Then they had a certain place to go for their particular work. You had your trucks lined up at a certain
Yeah.
spot because you showed me where the trucks were kept. And then how would you know what the hell you were going to do that
Yeah,
day?
every morning parade,
That's when they give the
Yeah.
orders out, eh?
and so and so was on kitchen fatigue, so and so's doing something else, and the duty drivers or duty medical men, they had their jobs.
And yet it was all in the one.
Yeah.
Where old Sid showed us
Yeah.
around and so on.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how often did you go into Boomtown?
Every payday.
Wow.
Every 2 weeks.
Did you guys ever walk into Boomtown?
Oh, yeah, we
Except on
walked.
a route march?
We walked every time we went down.
You never went on the back in a truck. Nobody ever.
Unless you hooked a ride, unless there was a truck going along, you'd jump in the back.
Yeah.
But then we'd go up to Crowbar. No, not Crowbar. Yeah, there was Crowbar to shows and stuff.
What were these civilians like when you'd go into Boomtown or into Crowbridge?
Oh, they were glad to see us. Especially when we were in the pub. Remember the Victoria, we used to go to 3 different lounges in it, I guess. We always went into the public because there was more doing there. A lot of people we got. Every time we then there'd be the same one sitting there.
Just like at home.
Yeah.
A beer parlor at home. You go in
Yeah.
and find the same one.
The trouble, we never maybe go down for an evening after we were paid, and by the time we broke it again.
And what would be their greeting? Canada, or would they call
They knew everybody
by name,
by
sort
your
of?
nicknames after a while. Some of the guys went to the Vic, and some went to the Crown. I forget.
Well, there was one down by the railway station.
Station, I guess.
The
it was
Station Inn,
oh,
was it?
Station. And the Crown was. I was only in there a couple of times. It was real old.
But when we were in Groombridge, did we go to the pub?
Yeah, we went down to.
Which one?
The Victoria. That's where we found out where the what was their names?
Oh, Green.
Green, yeah, Green.
No, Osborne.
Oh, Osborne, yeah.
Yeah, Osborne.
That's where we found out they'd gone to Docking.
Yeah.
I remember Christmas Eve and Christmas Day of 42. I was on guard.
As usual.
As usual. And at noon, on Christmas Day, the corporals took over the rest of the guard. Or noon or 10 o'clock. And while I was on the shift, when I finished, they took over. So Vic English, he might have been a lance jack or a corporal, and he was only just him and me up in old number 9 room. In the afternoon, I come off guard. So we walked down to the off-license place, out to down the hill. I think we had 8 shillings between the two of us, 8 shillings a piece, and we bought her all in beer and brought her home in a bag. we had, and then we drank 2 bottles apiece, and then I went down to the Victoria. And here was Baldy Hart, Hector Haig, Bill Hiller, and I don't know who all. They've been there all afternoon. And they were chug-a-lugging beer. Chug-a-lug. So I chug-a-lugged 1 pint down. That was what filled me up. Then they started for home, and I undertook to see that Baldy and Hector got home. God, what a trip that was.
Walking?
Walking.
Up that same road that you and I and Mom and Dad walked up?
That was a long walk. Hector would get lost, start wandering off, get in the ditch. Baldy was he was whirled on like a little rubber ball. And then there was quite a bit doing when we were in Lacewood.
Well, were you guys the only ones? Or were there other units?
Oh yeah, there was units all around.
Did they all seem to come to the pub at the same time?
No, they all had their own little town to go.
In Groombridge then the 24th were
pretty
the
well
only
owned
ones
it. Yeah.
that came for that?
You see a few of the Signal Corps guys, and there was a bunch of Navy fellows come in one afternoon. They were having a football game with one of the other outfits, and they came in before they went back down.
But the regulars would be you guys?
Yeah, we're 24th.
I wonder how many other regulars, like how many other units or whatever went through that same.
I think they all did, because here's some of the guys talking about where the Capers town they be, and they pretty well owned the pub, you know.
So the Capers were never at Lacewood when you were there?
They were
you never
in that
near
area.
them or anything?
Oh, yeah. We looked after them on sick break and stuff. I couldn't even tell you now where they were, but they're all within.
Well, how would you find them? You had to pick them up and take them to the base hospital. Where would you?
They knew you knew then where they were.
Yeah, but you don't remember.
No.
And you were never aware at that time that if you went into action and when you did, that you'd be the ones looking after the Capers and the Irish and the Perth, or?
Yeah, we knew we'd be looking after the 3 regiments.
And so in essence, you were doing it right then too.
Yeah, sure. But the Irish, they came to us and came to the 11th Brigade in the fall of 42.
So when the 11th Brigade moved out and went up to Hayden Hall, then did another brigade or something like that move in?
The 4th did come into that area. Because Grogan said he wasn't too far from it. He was Forest Row. It was just down the road a ways.
Yeah.
12th Dragoons. Oh, there was camps. I remember, especially one Sunday morning, was on guard duty just to, I guess I'd be on from 6 to 8 or 4 to 6, one or the other. And the camps are waking up and you hear the bugles all blowing around. I don't know how many bugles I heard blowing in Valley, and they're all within a minute of each other.
Right. Yeah. Who was your bugler? McCann or Bruce?
Never really had one, except Bruce Cann.
Well, I guess you never really had one, did you?
Yeah. Oh, Tarlin. There's that. Tarleton, we met down in Kitchener. Remember at the first reunion, they'd become grandparents. His wife was Bill Pett's sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that, yeah.
He could blow the bugle, boy. He could make her talk.
Well, he wasn't there last year, right?
No, he's dead.
He died.
Yeah. He was there at the
One of the ones we went down
either
to.
the first or second.
Tarleton. That's
Oh
quite
yeah,
a name.
remember old Johnny Lowhouse, Service Corps.
What, playing the bugle?
No, he was one of the first guys I really got to know in the Service Corps for some reason. I don't know how. Or in the 24th, I mean, he was service.
He was from the West.
Yeah, in Edmonton.
No. When did McCann come?
McCann come to us when we were up in Norfolk that fall, but just before we left there, because I'd gone into one of the either Kingsland or Norfolk to pick up some stuff, and we drove around to a station, I guess it was, and picked up this Service Corps guy. He rode back in the back of the truck. I don't remember too much about him till drove the fuel truck, I guess. You always see him around, but till he come to the section, took old Johnny's place. That was down in the Hitler line.
Oh, wait, you didn't know McCann until you get down into the...
No, not really. Not till he come to the section. I knew who he was and stuff. Bucky actually knew him better than I did, because Buck was in headquarters when...
Well, boy, once you and McCann got together, you sure made up for lost time then.
Yeah, he fit right in. But it was up there at Norfolk where he come to the outfit. And we were up there from sometime in the spring till way on October. And we were quite busy up there. I was either out and skiing or doing a lot of driving. It was, the camps were situated more, they were farther apart. We were right alongside a bomber airfield with Polish, and I think Gordon Bolton was up on the...
So now, you told me one time about going out and harvesting.
Yeah. When we first got there,
Where? Up north?
At Norfolk,
yeah.
at King's, at this Houghton Hall, they put us out, they'd scuffle their turnips.
Yeah, but no, this was harvesting.
And then, yeah, we stooped.
Stooped.
No doubt, and them, they were out for a couple of evenings. They're bagging grain either from a combine or, they were throwing it in the back of a trailer and bagged, and they had to stack it, and I wasn't on that.
What did you do? What were you on?
I remember stooking. You had to put the stooks up 2 or 6, 3, and like 6 sheaves like this, and you lay one across the top.
Yeah, a lot of the guys would never have stooped, I suppose.
No. Doroshenko and he'd come from up north to Pa. He knew how to stoop.
We still haven't found him.
No.
I wonder if we can try again for this summer.
I have to phone back up to see whether his aunt is still alive. Get his address again.
Well, this time when you phone, ask her what he's changed his name to or something, because...
She gave me his phone number and nobody ever answered.
Yeah.
But when we went up north to Houghton Hall, Monk's section was an advance party. We went up and we took over from the British field ambulance who were in there. We stayed with them about 2 weeks, I guess, for our 24th come up.
How'd that work? Did they treat you pretty
Oh,
good? Or?
Jesus, yeah, we just moved right in with them.
Were their ways much different than what you'd been used to, or what?
Oh, not much, but we're more.
What did you do in roll call and this kind of thing? Just not bother?
We were out just on the end by the Canadians by themselves, you know.
So you'd have your name on their
Yeah,
roster? And,
I guess so.
well, do you remember them calling your name out?
No.
Well, and they didn't, or they would have called it, I'd imagine.
But they fell in, prayed every morning. We was by ourselves. We had an officer with us, a monk. Guess Saunders was there too. And they had high tea or low tea. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, everything stopped. You couldn't have tea and biscuit. And they couldn't get over. Hey Maxie, calls monk, you know, Maxie, might do this. Okay, Maxie. And there's anybody around, like officer, Sergeant Monk in there. Their RSM was telling Monk and the sergeant's mess that they shouldn't let their boy do that.
No.
They get too familiar, you know.
He's probably right. There'd be some who would take advantage. You'd find that out. Okay, now one thing you've never ever mentioned very much about was church parade. Were you always on guard and didn't have to go, or what?
No, I can remember going to church parade. They generally walked down to a church in Broomtown, or I don't ever remember them having church parade in a unit. We probably did. No, we always went somewhere. And I suppose this padre of the Irish regiment said he was looking after the 24th, so we probably went to some of his church parades.
But you don't remember, the picture didn't look familiar.
No, I don't remember him at all.
Then you said the Irish, when did you really get that you were with the Irish?
Not until we got down to Italy.
But then did you go to a church in Italy?
No, I don't remember church parades much in Italy.
Well, if that, no wonder you didn't look
It was
familiar.
in England, I remember the
Church parades, yeah.
church parades.
But you don't remember any of the padres.
No.
You
I
must have
remember
really
a couple of
listened.
times that we had a civilian.
Like Sally Ann or somebody like that, or
No, I think it was just the village.
maybe it was a lay reader.
What did they call them over there? Did you call them ministers?
Vicar.
Vicars, yeah.
Well, that's priest. That's minister.
Yeah.
Vicar. Was he not in any kind of a gown or anything?
Yeah, he'd be standing up in front there, but it wasn't a padre.
No. Well, that would be the local vicar. What were the churches like? Stone?
Yeah,
Usually?
sure.
Anglican? Very Anglican looking, or there must have
I
been
guess
names
so.
on them, or were all the names gone?
Everything was taken down, all the signposts and
So you
names.
wouldn't know what church you were staying at or going to or anything.
Don't think so. Remember the RC parade and church, and then
And they'd go to a
Protestants.
different building?
yeah, they always went to a different church. Old Doc Manzik was RC, but he'd ask which one's going to be first, and he'd take the second one.
Well, now how would you go? March? From say Layswood?
Yeah, from Layswood, I think we used to march down, and then that's why everybody find excuse not to go. They'd figure another route march. And sometimes, remember, it's loading in back of trucks going somewhere. Must have been a little bit farther away.
So if that was the case, you'd be driving then, would you?
No, because I had the 1500 weight. That would be the bigger trucks that would
Oh.
take.
And who was on them?
Well, I think George Belfer had one, and oh God, I can't remember who drove the bigger stuff.
Did you ever drive big
Oh
truck?
yeah.
But not in England.
Yeah. I'd spell take somebody's vehicle over if they weren't around. Never liked the big ones. They were
Like what would they be comparable to? A big
3 ton.
3-ton here?
Yeah. But oh, they were rough. 3/4 mine didn't handle nice. It was a good vehicle.
So then if you had to tell someone that the majority of your time was spent driving, what would you have to say you did? Drove mostly.
Trucks, I guess.
Not ambulance.
What?
not the
Drove
Jeep.
ambulance steady for 9 months, first 9 months in England.
That's
And
pretty
then
good.
I'd be spelling off. Guy off and on. I remember spelling Red off one time,
And he was driving the what? The
he
big
was
lorry?
driving a heavy ambulance. That was down in Italy. It took him, he'd been going all night or something, or all day. I drove from headquarters, took a load somewhere to dump them off.
What about the Jeep?
Yeah, I drove Jeep quite often.
So if anybody was going to remember good old Orch, what would they remember him doing? Being a driver, a Jeep driver, an ambulance driver, heavy ambulance driver?
1500 weight, I guess, because drove it all the time. After I left the ambulance, that was the truck I was assigned to. That was my truck. And any other
What was
Jeep,
Gert?
that was her.
That was Gert.
That was it. Yeah, Gert. And any vehicle I drove after that was assigned to somebody else. And I would just
So when you drove an ambulance, it was not your assigned
not
ambulance?
then, no, because I'd be spelling somebody off.
So then if you went up the line, when the Capers were in the line or the Irish was in the line,
I'd drive my 1500 weight up to where we were,
to the aid post,
where we were staying, and then,
and you'd probably go on up further with an ambulance.
or else a Jeep, or maybe I'd stay right there. So Mac and I would generally be always back at the farmhouse or where we were staying. And then we'd spell the guys off. Mostly at night that we did spell them off in the Jeep.
Why were you guys the ones that spelled everybody else off? It sounds like you were awake all day and awake
no.
all night. When did you sleep?
Well, I guess.
Like you said, Red would be driving all day, so you'd drive all night. Well, when
I'd
did you
maybe
sleep?
only make one trip or two trips for him while he was.
When who'd go the next trip or two?
Well,
Then
maybe
him.
you wouldn't have to go,
But how did you know he wouldn't be going all night?
you'd this time I spelled him off. I drove a load back to another casualty clearing post. And Freddie King, I think, was my orderly. And when he came back, Red took over the next morning. I only remember making the one trip with it. Come back to headquarters. If generally didn't do too much spelling off with the heavy ambulance from our section back, it was the Jeeps and stuff. We spelled Speedy and Cummings off.
So then, did every driver similar to you? That's like McCann and Red, and all did the same thing as you were doing. You'd drive the big truck, and then you'd be spelling off somebody else with their. Now, did anybody else ever take the big truck then? Or did it just sit there and it was your vehicle and you were the only one that took it unless
No,
somebody
a lot.
else did?
A lot of times I'd be doing something else and they just say, so-and-so's gonna take your truck, and maybe Mac would drive it. He did drive it once and
Put it in the canal,
put it in the
yeah.
canal. And then Mac's truck, we didn't do much running. Once we got established, didn't do much running around with it because it was bigger and they had all the stuff in it. Half the time they move into a house, or when you're in action, you wouldn't unload the big truck. All the spare stuff would be on there as you wanted.
So it was like a traveling
Yeah,
garage.
Yeah, if you wanted something that was in the big truck, you'd go and get it. And then they'd use mine for going back for rations or else for stuff like that.
And it could be anybody that would drive yours
Yeah,
back.
most of the time it was me.
But otherwise, if you were on somebody else, on the Jeep, or you were on the ambulance, then
Somebody else would drive.
you would drive it.
Prittner always a service corps guy.
Now, the time you said Katona got carried, was it Katona got carried away and put a bunch of mileage on it, and you had to
That was in England.
cover it with a scheme?
Yeah.
Was he? What was he out joyriding in? A big truck?
Oh, that was the 1500.
Oh,
He was corporal over the guard the whole week I was away on leave.
what's a 1500 weight compared to a ton truck, a half ton,
Like that, yeah, 3/4 ton.
a 3/4 ton,
Yeah, a little bigger than a half ton.
but it was bigger back, you know,
Yeah.
it wasn't like
Yeah,
a,
it was just
like a half ton back.
it was a miniature big army truck.
So when we meet these stub-nosed things on the road right now, in convoy, like we did coming back from
Yeah, they'd
Schroeder's
be
funeral,
300 weights.
those were all 300, but there
Yeah.
was some shorter, bunty looking
Yeah,
ones in the convoy, were they the?
Yeah, they might have been the 1500 weight.
Yeah,
They got different, Geordie Haynes called them different weights for them now.
different models and
Yeah.
everything, I suppose.
I drove mostly Fords all the time, four-wheel drive Fords.
But they had these big funny looking tires on them now, they
big
look,
ground grip tires. They do 5-6 miles a gallon downhill.
I can never figure out how you people kept enough gas, enough fuel
Well,
up there to
Two
run these
tanks
things.
and then three jerry cans spare behind the cab? Boy, if she'd ever caught fire, she'd been burning yet.
How far away was the petrol to get to, and who brought it up?
I don't know. The McCann, before he joined the section, he was the petrol guy. And he'd drive from headquarters back to where the petrol dump was. It might have been 15 miles back or 20 miles, and hard to see.
And how long
It would all come into our headquarters, and we wanted fuel the section. We'd drive in
and get enough
to
to?
get enough to do. So
You ever remember being held up because it didn't get there, or there was
No.
something went wrong? It was always a pretty good system, eh?
always was fuel. Remember?
It's a wonder the Jerry's didn't try and get at that.
They did too. They did.
Would it be camouflaged
Yeah.
where it was?
Generally, they had it all stored out in a big field. There'd be a pile of cans here, not a pile, but a stack. And over there, would 50 yards be another stack.
But they'd be,
Spread around under trees and camouflaged. You wouldn't see them. You got right on top of them.
yeah, right.
That was another branch of the service corps looked after that.
So then, would they try and get that at night? So that this plane wouldn't spot them going into this place, or was it a daytime thing, or what?
I don't know.
Because
No, I think they went back anytime.
it came up in cans, did it?
Yeah, these square 4-gallon cans.
Yeah. So that wouldn't, the load would never, the Jerry's in the planes wouldn't know whether they had a
No.
load of supplies or
No.
a load of gas or a load of
No.
whatever. Blankets coming back from being washed or something like that.
Load of bully beef. But out in Hall, I remember one night the planes started taking off. Oh, I mean 6 o'clock or so, and about dark, all of a sudden there was a great big boom, and one of the planes got up so high and then come back down, and the whole load of bombs and everything went off.
As it landed?
Yeah, crash landed and the bombs tripped off.
Oh, God. But that pilot didn't get out.
No, I don't think any of them got out. It was Polish, they said. We went by there shortly after, a great big, it was a beet field or a potato field or something. Great big hole in it. And then they'd take off, and then sometime towards morning, they'd all come lumbering back in again.
What did they do? Remember when we were over in Zost, and there was a great moaning and crying and carrying on and such like, and we said,
Oh, that was a wake for the,
yeah, they
the
were having
Belgians.
for the Belgians,
Yeah,
something
well,
had happened.
somebody got killed.
Yeah, well, did they ever do that during wartime? Like if the
No.
Poles had something like that, did you ever hear anything different?
No.
Or
No.
I couldn't understand why the Belgians were making such a fuss out like
Well, they
that.
were having a big booze up.
Well, they sure must have been.
Remember Geordie said a helicopter pilot, so they're holding wake out for him.
Yeah, but it was just like moaning and groaning.
Yeah, I
It
think
wasn't
so.
like a bunch. I thought they really were having their version of an Irish wake because it was mournful and horrible. It wasn't like a bunch of guys on a bender.
when we were up in Houghton Hall, remember, I drove a bunch of guys into King's Lynn for the night, Saturday night, I guess, or Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock. And I parked my truck. They had a designated parking area that Provo looked after. You take your truck in there and leave it there, and they'd look after it for you. And
This was official?
oh yeah, sure.
What were the men going for?
Their own coat was show.
Oh, okay.
I think Johnny Lowhouse was with me, because we went to a show, Johnny and I, and we had some fish and chips. And everybody's,
Newspaper?
yeah, and everybody is supposed to be back at the parking lot at a certain hour, I don't know, it was 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And the two Frenchmen, Johnny Pilon and Toronto, we waited and waited and waited. They never showed. Yeah, there was an officer in charge of us too, because he says, well, we can't wait any longer, we got to go back. So we went back to camp. Sunday morning, Pilon and Toronto had got in, but then they found these two this strange English bike parked at our workshop with our bikes. So they got inquired on where it come from. Pilon and Toronto, they missed their ride home in the truck, so they got this bike.
They sort of borrowed it, did they?
Yeah.
Was it reported missing? By
Yeah.
So
They got
Her
help.
Majesty's Finest came?
They come took it back, and they Toronto and Pilon, they got hell for it. I don't know whether they lost it.
Who gave them 14 days or
I
whatever?
don't think old Cokie Joe had anything. I think that was the 2IC would hand out. I remember telling Pilon and Toronto that, geez, we waited and waited. You didn't show up, and the officer says, we gotta go. No, wasn't your fault. Wasn't your fault. How'd you get? This is before we knew how the bike. How'd you get home? They kind of snickered and.
What did they think to get away with?
No. You
Better
just
than
boarded
walking.
for a ride home.
But now, if they'd have walked, mind you,
Oh,
maybe
it was
a hell of a long way.
quite a ways up there. I imagine 10 or 15 miles.
But say they had, and come in late, would they have got in near as much trouble as they did by what they did?
Oh, I don't think so. Well, Pilon, he left us down in Italy,
Where were they from?
somewhere in Quebec. Toronto couldn't talk too good English. He got in trouble and did something wrong in England, and they had him up before the 2IC, and Pat Lane had to interpret for him.
You mean Pat's French was good
Yeah.
enough to
Oh, yeah,
interpret?
sure.
No, but I meant that, Quebec French and
Well, I guess
Manitoba French, and
but
sometimes the
Toronto,
two
he
don't.
understood a lot more than he let on. He was wounded pretty bad when Weiss got killed down at the casino. And Pilon said they chipped him. Oh, he got hit in the hip with a shrapnel. I think he's cut the nerve or something. And then Pilon, he transferred to the Vendoux. I don't know whether he got killed or what happened. He was a nice little Frenchman.
What about these guys that were half-breeds that
Oh,
Smokey Lesage and them? They were from,
Smokey and Smokey Lesage and